Hello and welcome to ZED Talks. So I am with best person ever, Scott Bentley, and Scott's going to tell you what Scott does as a brand strategist. I've worked with Scott. We met about over a year ago now, and one of my favourite people. So welcome, Scott, and thank you so much for being here today. Tell us about you and what you do.
Oh, great. Well, that's very kind of you. Thanks very much. Yes, so my name's Scott Bentley. I am a brand strategist, graphic designer. Essentially, I've been in the creative industries now for around 30 years, initially in publishing. So publishing, I was an art director and a creative director in that world. And really for me, I suppose I've learned about storytelling. And then from that, understanding who we're speaking to, who is that audience, and how do we best communicate with them. I think in a lot of ways that's really what I do. It's about communicating with our intended audience. So yeah, I mean, I think without getting too in the weeds on what is branding, what is brand strategy, what I do is I try and communicate with the intended audience.
I think so. I've got in my mind, there's a couple of things I want to bring the audience on a journey with. And sometimes I forget that we are recording. So, and that's the whole purpose, really. So, first of all, I've worked with you on a brand sprint, right? So, when I first met Scott, which was through BNI, that's how we met, BNI Knightsbridge. And if anyone knows what BNI does, it's a place where businesses go to on a referral base. Like, we want to know each other, our businesses, so that we can refer business, we can be raving fans and ambassadors for people in the room, which is phenomenal business. Okay, that there's a lot of business that can pass there, and that's how Scott and I met. So then we did a brand sprint. I thought I knew. So this was a real moment for me. I thought I knew, coming from a corporate background, what a business did and why it did it. I thought I was very smart getting to a C-suite. How can I be at that position in a company and not really understand deeply what each department does? Now, Scott and I have got a similarity that we worked for Condé Nast, not at the same time, but that's a good breeding because there's a lot of quality that goes on with Condé Nast. There's a lot of great people, great work, very quality driven. From the brands that they have, from Vogue to GQ to Tatler to Vanity Fair, etc., etc. Anyway, I digress. We were at BNI, and when we did our brand sprint, what was in my mind is, I think I know this. And what was such a shock for me, Scott, is how little I knew. Because what I did is I come out of a corporate world. So for any SME or business owner here that's listening to this is going to be a really valuable episode, because you don't know what you don't know. And wherever you come from in a corporate environment, be it marketing, HR, legal, finance, you come from that expertise and you come from that lens. And then you go into a business, and what you try and do is do exactly what you did in a corporate job as a business, and it doesn't work. And here's why: because you need to be able to position your services or your product, whatever you're doing, and get paid for it. And that's a very different skill set. So knowing that we now need to go and fish for business, scout for clients, ones that we want to work with, that will feel the benefit of our services and the impact of what we do, is not an easy and smooth journey. And so in that, right, which is sales and marketing, then that's another layer of complexity, which is, well, what's sales and what's marketing? And then when you go into marketing, what's marketing versus branding? This was like, for me, and I've spent the last, probably, you'll know because you've helped me do branding, the last probably 8 months of going backwards and forwards on an iterative journey of discovering my identity. And is my identity different from my business? That's another. I mean, we could go into a lot of detail about it. Anyway,
Yeah.
I'm like, because I could go down rabbit holes about this every day.
A lot
Because
of really good points there. I just wanted to pick up on a couple of things. So, as people that have come out of the corporate world, and you want to go out on your own, there's basically there's 3 things. There's the corporate life, there's the freelance life, and then there's having your own business. And I do think that being freelance and having your own business are different things. So,
I agree.
if you're in a corporate job, you turn up every day, you do what you're told to do, to an extent, you leave it to an extent, you kind of leave it at the office and you go home. Freelancing, though, freelancing is sort of a halfway house. So you are going into corporate spaces and you're fulfilling the corporate, task, but you're not like employed by them. You are essentially, temporary. But essentially, you're doing the same job as a person who's on the ground,
Yeah.
who's getting paid. Having a business, though, is completely different
Yeah.
because you are not only you won't get the same clients if you are, and also you are having to do more things. So I always say that the problem with having your own business is that you're the best paid post person, best paid bottle washer, best paid sort of toilet cleaner because you do it all. You
Yeah.
have to answer your emails. You have to go looking for work. You have to pay the bills. You have and you don't have an accounts department. You don't have a sales and marketing department. You don't have, and you've still got to do your own job.
Yeah.
So you've got to do your job and
And
also do all the
and
things
yeah.
around doing your job, which you never had to do in the corporate world. And also you didn't have to necessarily do that when you were freelance. You just put your invoice in, get your invoice out. That's it. So that was just one thing. I'll say that most people that go think, oh, okay, I've done this for 20 years. I'll go and start my own business
Yeah.
up. It's just not the same. And
Yeah.
also, when you go and start working with SMEs, their pain points are so different. They are so focused on not spending money. Whereas I think, generally speaking, more established enterprise businesses, they know that, yeah, okay, we might have to spend this money and it might be a waste of time, but we're going to try it. Oh, okay, that didn't work. Okay, we're going to try something else. We're going to try something else. But, small businesses just don't have that fat in the system. They just don't have that flexibility. They just can't afford it.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's different SMEs. There's like one man bands, and there's like 10 people operations, and there's 100 people operations. But yeah, it's very it's a selling to each of those people are very, very different things.
Yeah, maturity is different, wildly different in business acumen, in experience. But there's and somebody listening to this may be any one of those things, and they may
Mm.
also be in a corporate business. So today, given that said, let's then talk about identity, because when
Mm.
you before, for context,
Mm.
before we hit record, we talked about the sniff test, and I want to go to the sniff test and talk about
Mm.
that. What is the sniff test and why do you use it? But anyway, and that's in context of what we were talking about, which we will bring the reader and audience on a journey, or viewer, listener, whatever you want to call yourself. So we had a lovely discussion. We've had multiple discussions about branding, marketing, the variation, the difference. And you described it as a house. Could you
Mm.
go back to that? And because I think this is a really important, this comes from the economy. The economy is in not a great place at the moment in multiple locations around the world. We
Mm.
also know as a fact that small businesses make up quite a large portion of the economy.
Mm.
We also know from Companies House, just speaking in the UK alone, that there is more businesses than ever that have registered as a company. Okay,
Mm.
so we talked about freelance a second ago, and this wouldn't necessarily apply to that's excluding these. These are people that set up businesses.
Mm.
So that is on the rise, and it has been for quite some time since the pandemic. So we're now reliant on these small businesses thriving. And I think that most small businesses are only just surviving.
Mm.
And there's a reason for that, because there might be a supply and demand challenge, because we might not be clear about what we're talking about to the right audience, what we do, and solving the problems of that audience, which you just described as those pain points are radically and could be very different across all of those. So we need to be clear about who we're talking to, what we're talking about, what problems these people are experiencing, and how we're going to then solve it for them and get paid for it. So with the context and that and narrative of that, going back to the house, would you
Mm.
describe, because I think that's a really good way of describing the differences between branding and marketing, if you could.
Yeah, yeah. I don't think it's a particularly new analogy, but I think it sometimes works. Um, I'll bring in another analogy as well. So the analogy is that branding is the foundations of a house, and essentially, marketing is the house itself. So yes, you can build marketing, marketing funnels, and you can build marketing campaigns, and you can build marketing, assets on nothing, on no foundations. But I think we all know that where that's going to lead. That's basically going to lead to a place of things not kind of turning out quite how you want, and that's essentially because it's not built on anything. It's not built on any real foundations. Now, the thing about branding is that what you're essentially doing is building building the foundations of your company, knowing who you are, what you want to say, who you want to say it to, and who those people are, what their pain points are. And from those things, from those pain points, from those avatars, you get to unlock insights. And those insights are those little relatable moments. So, for instance, if you were a skincare and makeup brand, for instance, and you were deliberately targeting, young middle age, or even sort of like, 30, let's say sort of like 30 or 40-year-old women, busy women, one of the little insights may be that women of that sort of age with busy jobs and busy lives, they put their makeup on in the car in the rear view mirror. Okay, that's a little insight. That's a little thing that people in that niche, in that, would relate to. They get it. So then what you can then do is you can take that person, take that little piece of insight, and then you can build a little campaign or a little advert or something around selling to people that do that thing. Okay. Now that's only a small thing. That's just a little ad, and you might run that again and again, depending on how successful it was. And you can talk about the funny things about stopping in traffic and getting makeup in your eye,
Yeah,
or
yeah, yeah. I can see that.
and maybe the ad is something like, and you talk about that little insight and that little pain point. But you can't do that if you don't know your avatar, if you don't know their pain points, and you don't have those little insights. And those
Yes.
pain points, insights, and avatars are your branding. That's the foundation to which you build the marketing on top of. Now, there are many things, there are many rooms in the house which can be occupied by many different people, and they can be
Mm,
decorated in many different ways.
mm.
Some can be very ornate, and some can be very plain and simple. Some can be very upfront, and some can be much more subtle. But all of this essentially can only happen if you've got the foundations. The thing is, the thing about these foundations, if you don't have them, you're constantly building a new ad, a new piece of marketing, a new message, and a new website, whatever it is, whatever the marketing channel is. You're building it afresh every time. That's hard work, it's time consuming, and it's expensive. But if you've done the work first, the branding work, if you've done that work first, everything on top of it becomes simpler, quicker, cheaper, iterative. Try it, doesn't work. Try the next one, doesn't work. Try it, doesn't work. Try it, that works, because you've got something to build off of. And I think people often balk at spending the money of doing the brand work because they think it's expensive, and what am I getting out of it? I'm not getting any sales out of it. You're right, because branding leads to marketing, which leads to sales. Sales is, sales only happens when the other things are in line.
Yeah.
uh, um, and the other analogy I was going to use here, and one that I've used in one of our meetings, funny enough, was most people come to me and they want to put the cart before the horse. So
Yes. Good.
they say,
That's what I hoped
Scott,
you was going to say.
I want a website. I'm like, okay, great. So you want a website. Why do you want a website? Well, because I need a website. Why do you need a website? Well, because everybody else has got a website. Okay, is that the reason you need a website? Well, I don't know. Okay, so who are we talking to on the website? I don't know. So These are all the branding things. These are all the things that you should know before you build any form of marketing. A website is marketing. Like going to BNI or another networking group is marketing. A brochure is marketing. Social media is marketing. But if you haven't done the work, you haven't done, the foundational work, yeah, you can build a website, you can do social media, you can go to these networking meetings, but don't expect to get much out of it. But there you go. How does that sound? I mean, I
Yeah.
rambled for a bit there, but I think
No,
I've got
no,
everything
I
right.
love it because and we're going to talk about specifically. I'm going to ask your advice on sort of HR. HR is a service; it's around
Mm,
people, and we're going to get to AI because
yeah.
there is a big implication or impact. Not implication, maybe an implication, but definitely an
Mm,
impact.
mm,
Um, but going to the point of the house, you can build a house that is brick and mortar, and you can do solid foundations on a certain soil type. And if you were to build a house on a beach without any infrastructure in that's wood, then you're building something that's essentially going to be washed away, swept away, because it's just not going to be sustainable.
We're going deep
That
on
house,
this metaphor, aren't we?
oh, absolutely. But I think that people, well, actually, they'll tell us, won't they? I think that this is where we don't spend the time, and that's exactly the point. Is and for anybody that is going into business or starting a business or already 5 years in a business and it's not working, I can tell you now, your roots are your branding.
Mm,
And I'm not a brand expert, strategist in any way, shape, or form. I've learned
mm.
from a good person, learning from a good person. Um, and I don't think I can absolutely bang on enough about know your branding, understand what the demand is. Are you filling that demand? Because it's all lovely having the best service in the world. If no one knows about it and it's not wanted, where do we go with that?
Mm,
So let me ask you then about the HR world, like as in
mm,
you know a little bit about my world or the world of people listening to this potentially. There's a lot of people coming into business that have been the 20-year-old C-suite that's turned into a fractional or an interim or started a consultancy business, and it
mm,
usually starts off as solo, then goes into micro, less than 10 people I'll define as micro. And there's a lot of people doing this type of stuff now because I tell you why, the job market for HR people has radically changed. Radically. There is less roles.
mm,
Brilliant people are finding it 6 to 12 months before they're even getting some form of a role. And that's pushing people to then make a decision around starting a business.
mm.
Some might go freelance, interim, yes. Some may go the whole hog and say, right, I'm going in and I'm going to start a business. So, why is it important for HR people to have a brand?
So yeah, I think what you're asking there is around this idea of personal brand rather than sort of corporate brand. And I do think that they are different.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, so that's a really good point. So why do you need a brand? Well, first off, you have a brand. Everybody has a brand. So it's not about making a brand, it's about shaping a brand. Now, it sounds like I'm trying to obfuscate here, but I'm not. What I'm trying to say to you is that everything you do is branding. Okay.
Yeah,
The way you speak on social, your haircut, your clothes, your makeup, your that's if I mean, well, um, the way in which you interact with people, your website, your way in which you write, everything is branding. And for personal branding, that's also true. So if you've got quite a clipped manner, if you've got quite a posh voice, if you wear certain kinds of clothes, people will make assumptions of you, whether you like it or not.
absolutely.
And that is branding. Branding is what you project. Now, you can control what you project, or you can decide to let everybody else just make their own minds up. Now, there are people that I mean, you see this a lot on things like Love Island, where people kind of say, "Well, it's just me, isn't it? Just take me or leave me. Just I am who I am." Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And what you've decided to do there is let the world make those decisions for you, rather
Yes.
than you making the decision of what you want the world to see. So go for it, but don't be surprised when it backfires. Now, so then there comes this whole thing around authenticity. Well,
Yes.
how authentic can you be then? And I think there is something to be said that authenticity is bullshit.
Love
I'm
it.
not saying it's 100% that way, but what I am saying is, I am not going to be the same to you, Zoe, as I will be to a complete stranger.
Yep.
And I'm also not going to be the same to my wife. I will divulge things to my wife. I will have conversations with my wife that I would never have with you. And I would have conversations with you that I would never have with a stranger.
Yes.
Now, I'm still me, but I have to understand, what am I doing? What am I projecting? What is my brand?
Yeah.
So
Filter. You filter
I'm not
things.
sure if that necessarily answers the questions. What I would say, though, is be aware. Be aware of what you're doing, because everything that you do, comes with a consequence. Everything that you do comes with
Absolutely.
judgment. And we still live in a world where people are, we are not in a world where everyone just accepts people for who they are. Unfortunately, that would be a beautiful world. That would be a wonderful world. It is not our world. Um, so when it comes to understanding what is that brand that you want to build, what is that brand that you want to create, that's a different question, but it's one where I think you have to lean into what you're good at. You have
Yep.
to lean in to those things, and you have to push those to the front of your brand.
Yep.
And those things that maybe you are, I don't know, you just don't want to show as much, you then just move those to the back of your brand. And like you said, it's an iterative process. No one gets it right first time, and we change. But fundamentally, we as people don't change. So then it's around working out, what are your personal values, because
Yes.
I think values don't really change. Personality changes, and how it's kind of pushed out into the world changes.
Phases of life. Yep.
But
Yep.
things that you feel deeply about, you can go back to psychology and talk about, are we all kind of really fully formed from the age of sort of 7 to 11, whatever. We can get all Freudian on it if you want. But essentially, those values, I think, are kind of set quite early. So you have to lean into, if you want to
Yes.
do authenticity,
Yeah.
which is not complete bullshit, but I think the way it's characterized often is. But you have to lean into those values. How does that sound? Or have I
Yes.
rambled too much?
No, because you know that we've been on that exercise of even
Yeah,
doing that. So we've worked together in a number of ways, and we've often come back to the same as what's important to you, which is your value proposition. Like,
yeah.
what is your values? And whilst they don't wildly change, the meaning behind them may do, depending on your life and in which area of your life, professional, personal. And
Mm.
I think now more than it makes some very, very, very good points. And you know that I always love our conversations, which is why we're doing this today, because it always is such a spark of intelligence for me. It's like it's like food, soul food. Um, I purposely asked the question around HR because HR is not any different than any other business or a person. It's a skill, right? So but one caveat is that with HR professionals or people that certainly work with people is, and you've hit nail on the head for me, authenticity. You cannot work with people or be a people person, if you don't have a level of compassion, a level of empathy, a level of authenticity, and also a level of discretion and confidentiality. That is a non-negotiable because
Mm.
when we're dealing with people and to be really clear in a HR world, people for me can be customers, not just employees.
Mm.
Because employees, customers to me are all blurred now. They're all buying, they're all consuming, and you want anyone that you interact with to talk positively about their interaction, their experience with you or the business. And let's face it, not many people say, "Oh, IKEA's a IKEA's crap." They'll say that person that served me was really miserable. No, they won't
Mm.
talk about IKEA, but they'll talk about a person.
Mm.
And so we can do the same thing in HR. People label us sometimes a little bit. We're not always that popular because we have to deal with people that are sometimes in crisis,
Mm.
sometimes people that are in euphoria, and everything between those 2 points. So we have to deal with a lot of sensitive and often challenging situations, as well as the good stuff. We provide the infrastructure for a company to survive, thrive, grow, scale, all that good stuff. And I think this is the time more than ever for people who want to lean in and are authentic and know their values to take the stage and shine, because now's the time. You've got all the tools available, we've got all resources available to us. And I mean, hell, you've got even information available at a fingertip now with AI. Information is not so it's not so expensive anymore because we've got access to it. And
Mm.
so how do we become really unique at what we do is our branding.
Absolutely. Your position, I mean, we talk about positioning. Um, so yeah, what's your position?
Yeah.
What's your opinion? I think this is the other thing as well. We have to have an opinion on something, but it has to be an informed opinion. I mean, it's all very well being kind of like, well, I think the sky's purple. Yeah, you can say that's an opinion, but we can pretty much prove that that's wrong. But I think that having an opinion is really, really important. So developing that opinion. And one of the problems that I have with AI is that um, it is not good for doing that, for you working out what your own opinion is on something. And so I think that's one of our things. There's something else you said, and I think the thing about HR, and just going back to your thing there, if we look at it from two perspectives, if you look from a sort of corporate perspective, people who work in HR, and you look at HR professionals looking to get work, I think there's different things there. But I think we've touched a little bit on that personal branding thing of like HR professionals trying to get work. But for people in corporate HR, how does brand sort of work for you? Or, what is that? What is that intersection? And it's around culture. I think
Yes.
it's so valuable. Now, you may have heard Peter Drucker. He's an interesting sort of sort of a business guy, wrote a load of books. He's got this great phrase that says, culture eats strategy for breakfast." Very, very kind of famous quote. And it's a very good quote as well, because it doesn't matter what the brand is in a company. It doesn't really matter what the brand strategy is, what the corporate strategy is. If you don't have the culture for
Yeah.
those people within it who believe it and actually act on it, doesn't matter. So culture is the sort of the bedrock of
Yes.
many businesses, and HR is right at the epicenter of that. They really, really are. If they don't understand the culture of the company,
Yeah.
then you are then literally why the F are you there? Because
Yeah.
that is everything. That is, and you're going to get pushback from people with employees. If they don't understand the culture, or they got the wrong end of the stick of the culture. There's a really wonderful guy on Instagram that I follow that kind of shows you all these terrible bosses and the kind of text messages that they get from people and that. And somebody would say, well, we don't really have a culture, we just work hard. That's culture.
Yep.
Be getting in at 8 o'clock, and not leave until 7. That's the culture. The culture is you work bloody hard. That is culture.
Yeah.
And what you would then have to do is, but for that, we compensate you a lot. Okay. So yeah, you work bloody hard, but yeah, you also get a lot of money. That can be a culture.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Another culture could
Absolutely.
be kind of like, we're all a family. We all love each other. We're all
Yep.
best friends. That can be culture.
Yeah.
But if you don't know that, if you're a real hard, you know, if you're a real hard going salesperson and you're desperate to make your first million, you're desperate to drive a Lamborghini, you're desperate to, live in a multi-million-pound house, and you're in a fluffy, we love each other, we're all family sort of business, you're probably in the wrong business.
Yeah.
You probably need to go and work in a hard-nosed place. Fine, know that, but that's going to come up against HR. HR are going to feel that. They're going to feel
Yeah.
people come up to them going, why the hell aren't I making more money? Or why the hell are people so nasty here?
Uh,
Culture!
and that speaks volumes through everything, though, Scott. That's turnover, why people leave, why people choose to leave
Yeah.
a company. It talks, the point around, and I think
Sorry,
it's
can I
something.
just, sorry,
Yes.
there's a point I just wanted to
Yeah.
finish
Yeah.
with.
Go for it. Yeah. Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
point, sorry, and I should have said this, the point of this is that culture comes from your brand and
Yes.
it needs to be set.
Yes.
So the high ups, the
Yeah.
CEOs, the owner founders need to set that culture. They need
Yes.
to be deliberate in that culture, and that is your brand. That is your values. That is your personality. So if the values of the company and the personality of the company create the culture, but it has to be sort of set early, because if it is not set out and people don't know what it is, they get
Totally.
confused and that leads to problems. But if they set it from the start
Yeah.
and they set it like from the get go, and when you walk in the door, you say, we're going to tell you a little bit about our brand values here at Bentley Creative, or at Walters Inc. We are going to tell you our values are this. We work bloody hard. We play hard. You get a lot of money, but I expect you to do this. And
Yes.
these are what we're working towards. And this is our mission and this is our vision. Are you okay with that? Are you
That
okay with that as an
that's the point,
employee,
Scott.
as someone coming
Right.
to this business? Are you okay with that? Because if you're not, that is cool. We're not for you, and you're probably not for us.
Yeah.
But if more people were more honest about the culture of their business, they probably would have a lot less churn. And if
Yeah.
they had less churn, they make a lot more money, because that's expensive. Churn is expensive. But if the CEOs, the CFOs understood that if they set the culture and they hired to that culture, then
Absolutely.
they would have a better business. But they've got to do the branding first, and they don't want to spend the money on the
And I'll
branding.
make a distinction here. HR people aren't doing the branding.
No, they're not. No, it's
It's
not. It's not
not
their. No,
their job. It's not their expertise. It's not their skill set.
no.
And this is where I think we get very, very bogged down saying HR is the epicenter of creating culture. No, the business needs to create the foundation, the branding, which sets the tone and the
Yeah,
standard.
yeah,
Then HR become the advocates, the ambassadors, the champs that do wrap everything that they do around
yeah,
the culture, the foundation, the branding, so that they're
yeah,
continually building on, hiring to those standards,
yeah,
assessing and promoting and paying against those standards to
yeah,
that culture.
yeah.
Because most people that I've ever worked with in my life as a HR professional, I know that one of the things I've had to defend, and I will say defend, is when somebody comes in and says, I'm not paid enough to do this.
Hmm?
And I'm like, that's very interesting. You took a job, you knew exactly what the job was. So now the perception psychology is I'm not paid to put up with what is expected or what is being asked of me. I'm not paid to put up with this. And
Mm,
that's where I'm like, well, hang on a moment. A contract is a piece of paper that sets out what expectation of what you're getting paid to deliver. There's no emotional investment required at this point. You may
no.
feel emotionally invested, but the point of an employee and employer relationship is no different than a service provider or a
Mm,
vendor or the Vodafone contract that you have or
mm,
the service level agreement you have with British Gas. You
mm,
do this, I pay you for that. It's
mm,
that simple. But
Yeah.
in all the reputational stuff that we get,
Mm.
is that that's a HR problem. I'm going to say again, HR are not decision makers. They're not builders. They're advocates, ambassadors, champs. They help to regulate. They help to bring into balance, to mediate, to be the kind of like the conduit of embodying that culture.
Mm.
And I think
It
that's
is
where,
literally the front line
yeah,
between feelings
yeah,
and and what what the company wants.
I- I-
And
I-
the problem is that, and I feel for people in HR because they have to wrestle with your feelings about what
yeah,
the company wants to deliver on, and and again that comes down to culture, whether they kind of want to take that into consideration or not. Like you said, is it black and white? Is it like a contract? Is it like a mobile phone contract, or are you sort of a bit more in the fluffy sort of caring camp, where you'll bend a little bit more? But that's all. Yeah,
yeah,
that's all your culture. But your
yeah. Or
culture is your
feelings,
brand.
feelings and
Your
emotions on the
brand has
subject. Yeah,
to inform your culture, but your culture is your brand.
yep.
You know.
Totally. And so it's so shocking for me when I go into somewhere and I see, and I haven't been into an organization for a long time that does this, but there has been some, showing my
Mm,
age, where I go in and they list out their values, whether it's on their website, on a wall, and they
mm,
just don't embody them whatsoever. I think
yeah.
that is where we get a lot. And there's no hiding anymore. There's no hiding. You can't hide. You got to walk
Mm,
the walk and talk the talk, because AI has come along and exposed everyone for what it really is. So let's get into AI, shall we? We've got about probably a good old 10 minutes to have a chat about this.
yeah.
Scott, I know that we have similar and very opposing views on AI, or at least I
Mm,
think we do, which is
yeah.
brilliant. So give me your view or your opinion. And I'm going to actually hint on something earlier on that you said. Anyone that's listening to this is triggered about being judged and having people's perceptions and criticism. I'm going to say it out now. Bias exists, whether you like it or not. You're
Yep.
biased. I'm biased. Every listener's biased because
Yep.
we have lived experience.
Yep.
No AI has my experience unless I tell it what my experience is, and it will then create patterns, because that's all AI is. It's patterns based on previous information. It cannot predict and be me. Anyway, I'm going to go over my soapbox about that for a second. But
Mm.
AI, how and what's it doing in your world? Do you love it? Do you hate it? Tell me your views.
I have very mixed opinions on AI. I use it. I use it I probably use it every day. I use it for a multitude of tasks, but they are generally not highly complex tasks. They are generally stuff which I don't want to do, which isn't, I mean, it's like, yeah, look at this document and give me the highlights, or it's write this email in a friendlier tone. Because I mean, one of the things I've recently done is I've got a very interesting client um, who is his emails are just like, I don't understand his emails, honestly, and it's not me being facetious. They're just, I just do not understand them, and so I will often put them into this basically project that I have of just his work, and just say, please decipher this email. And he'll say, I think he's trying to say this, and I'll be like, yeah, I think that might be it, but that yes, that I'm not sure. I'll need to kind of, so sometimes it's like deciphering really bad emails. But sometimes it can be interesting, especially from a strategy perspective.
Mhm.
And I will give it, a load of information. So you know, look at this, give me the opposing view of these points in the style of a comedian. And I mean, like, give me 20 of these, or give me 20 headlines around this subject. And there may be in that 20 one or two which have something in it. and then I'll pull that down. I kind of go, yeah, but no, but yeah, and I'll tweak it and I'll change it, and I think, okay, what about that? And I'm like, okay, that still doesn't feel right. What about this? Okay, I'm kind of nearly there, but
Mm.
so there'll be that. I have used it in the past to sort of create LinkedIn content, but the reality is that most of the time I completely rewrite it. But what it does do is put it in a nice set of, it puts the structure together for me. So it gives me like, start with this, midpoint this, finish on this. I'm like, okay, yeah, it's written badly, but I get the structure. And I prompted it enough to say, don't use this phraseology, don't use these terms, don't do this, don't do that. So I've guarded it, but it's still just talks too confidently, talks too like it knows everything. The way in which I find AI writing is it kind of sets everything out as a fact rather than a position or an opinion. So that's a little
Very
bit of where I
interesting.
use it.
Yeah, wonderful. So I think there's a couple of things which come to my mind, which is I fully I think that from an outside world, AI is a very good aggregator, consolidator, sparring partner, can be. But like
When,
I now
only
know,
when you prompt it to spar. Most of the time, it's a sycophant. But yeah,
so
but if you
I
prompt it to spar,
absolutely, I've got custom GPTs from based on Alex Hormozy, Tony Robbins.
hmm.
They've got hours of content, their tone
Brilliant
of voice, their
grifters, by the way,
books.
both of them.
Sorry?
They're both great grifters. I think Hormozy specifically, such a grifter. But
um,
carry on, darling.
so I kind of like love that it will
Yeah,
talk, it being AI will talk in the Hormozy style, or Daniel
yeah,
Priest or Stephen Bartlett or Tony Robbins, Joe
yeah.
Dispenza. All of these are absolutely brilliant, and it's based on their work, which is fabulous. And I do get
I'll
lots of
take it. I'll
insights
take
from that.
exception to fabulous, but carry on.
Well, I mean, I like
Yeah, fair enough.
I
I'm
enjoy.
picking. Go on, carry on. I'm
I
picking.
love the enjoyment of playing with this,
Mm,
and it's very good. Where I am so curious
mm,
is with these. So let's backpedal a second. We talked about people starting businesses, and the first thing they usually say is, "I need a website. I need,
mm,
I need a business card.
mm,
I need a logo to go on the business card.
mm.
Um, I need a letterhead. Oh, uh, I might need a proposal template. I might need, all of these
Social
things.
media
Social
templates.
media, yeah, absolutely.
Mm.
Um, is AI good to do all of that?
Um, is AI good to do that? I'm trying to think of a more nuanced answer than no. Uh,
Oh my god, we could be.
uh,
We
no.
yeah. I'm going to kind of narrow it down a bit more.
Go on.
Absolutely not.
Yeah,
You
that's a
are
bit more nuanced.
You are you, and you have to extract you, and
Yeah.
AI can't do that for you unless you've twinned and cloned, which would take quite a while to do, and you'd
Mm,
have to know everything about you to be cloned, which
mm,
takes an enormous amount of training and there's a lot that goes
yeah.
into that.
Yeah.
But for somebody starting out, the simple answer is no. Where do you think from, and I know what you're perhaps going to say,
Mm,
the basic, where do you see as somebody that's starting out and a business, so a
mm,
consultancy,
mm,
um, that has an expertise,
mm.
from your perspective, where should they start?
Um, I was having a really interesting conversation with a friend of mine, and we was going through a list of the people that were in a particular uh, networking chapter that all had their own businesses, and we said to them, should they have a business or should they just go and work for someone?
Hmm.
And 70 to 80% of the people, we said they should probably just go and work for someone. So if you are going out on your own, so that's the first point. The first point is I think most people shouldn't start their own business, and that's me being someone that's had their own business now for 15 years, and I still think most days I probably should just go and work for someone. It's a lot easier. So if you do want to go and do your own business, that's different. Know why.
Yeah.
Why do you want your own business? Is it because you don't like the man? Is it because you don't like working for a company? Could that just be that it's the wrong company? Go and work for a different company.
Yeah.
Or is it because there's something actually, have you got, I think this is the difference. I mean, talking about your friend Simon, if you've got a dream that
Simon
doesn't
Squibb, by the way, for
exist,
anyone listening, Simon Squibb, yep.
I'm a script. If you have a dream, if you have something that you want to achieve that isn't out there at the moment, the only way to do it is to go and do it yourself. Yeah,
Yeah.
100%. If you just don't like working for your current company, go and find another company. But don't think that going out on your own is going to be easier than running your own company, because it's not. You know, because as we say before, you'll be the best paid bottle washer, or maybe even the worst paid bottle washer. At least they get paid.
That's
So
true.
the reality is, really know why you want to do it, know why you want to start your own business, and then know who you want to serve. We've talked about this a lot. So the reality is, if you're in HR, do you want to be in HR for a fashion brand? Do you want to be in HR for a publishing brand? Do you want to be in HR for a construction company? Do you want to be in HR? What part of it do you want to be in? That's the thing. It's like, no, just probe yourself a little bit more into, what am I really doing? Simon Sinek has, Find Your Why. Great
Yeah.
book.
And
Find your
Simon and
why.
Simon have just got together, by the way. They've just done a
Yes, I saw that
recording.
video. Yeah,
Squibb
yeah, no, I
and
saw that.
Sinek, yeah, which is very useful to watch, listen to.
So it's like, why? I mean, for some people, work is to make money so they can go and do nice things at the weekend.
Yeah, yeah.
Great, do that. Go and get a job that allows you to do that. Don't think starting your own business is going to allow you to do that. Because I think, going back to your original point, which was around, like, and I think that the numbers are crazy here. It's like 80%, 85, 90%, whatever it is, of of businesses registered are SMEs. But the reality is, they're not. Most of them aren't making much money, and they
Not
are.
really.
They're
Yeah.
fighting really, really hard. Um, so yeah, I mean, have I gone off topic there? I don't
No,
know.
no, no,
Oh,
so that is exactly it. I think that too. Question yourself, why do you want to start a business? Why do you do, and in fact, you could apply this to every areas of your life. What is
mm,
it that you're looking to get from this thing? How do you want to feel? How do you want to,
mm,
what will life be like when you've had this thing? What would life
mm,
be like if you never achieved it? Like what lights you up? What gives you
mm,
amazing energy? And actually, it's usually something much deeper. So there's superficial layers of, well,
mm,
my values are this, and most
mm,
people actually don't know their values. So going back to that, they'll think their values are their values. They've
mm,
inherited most of them. Until you've done value work and
mm,
absolute core inner work and in your own development, you'll then know why these are your values, why they're
mm,
motivational. And
mm.
it may be from childhood, it may be from a whole host of lived
Yep.
experiences that you've adopted or chosen to these values. But it's very deep. And this comes back down to, if you've ever looked at an identity wheel, we are born into certain identities. Some change over time. This is no different than branding,
Mm. It's
because
just
it's about
understanding it. Yeah.
it's about what you want people to know of you. You
Mm,
show parts of yourself that
mm,
are more desired, because guess what? Our fundamental in this lifetime as a human being, we want to be loved and we want to be good enough. And
mm,
that's the basic fact of how human psychology, human needs, hierarchy of needs. We want to be loved, we want to be accepted for we are, and we want to be good enough. And most of
mm,
us don't feel that way.
mm.
And I say that, mic drop. Anyway, so you
Yeah.
answered it beautifully. And I'm
Thank you.
so sad that we've come to the end
Oh,
of our time together.
I haven't even slagged off AI yet. So
I know you have.
I've come
So
up for
you
another one.
can you come back and slag A off, please?
Yeah, yeah, of course I can. Of course I can.
Right. So because you know that I absolutely love all discussions with you. So Scott's going to come back and talk about AI. But thank you so much for your time today.
Pleasure.
Um, I love talking with you. I love spending time being in your presence. You know that this is not new news. And I hope that people listening to this have learned something really new. Your key takeaway is branding and identity and culture are essentially at the heart of everything. So whatever you do in this life, whether it's personal or professional, people are going to form opinions about you. They're going to have a say about you and they're going to judge you, and shit happens. So you've got to own it. And you've got to present to the world in the way that you feel is authentic to you and how you want others to perceive you. So on that note, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for listening. And if you're interested in working with Scott or having any questions, there will be some dialogue on the bottom, some description of how you can reach out to Scott and work with Scott. I've worked with him. I know he's amazing. And if you choose to, you won't be disappointed. You won't have an easy ride, because it's going to ask you tough questions, and AI will not do that. Scott, thank you. It's a pleasure.
My absolute pleasure as well. Thank you.
Look at my hearts too.
See you later.
Right.